Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, because we all love game nights with our family and friends. But when you play solo games, then every night can be a game night. Check us out along with other great podcasts at dicetowernetwork.com.
Every Night is Game Night, episode 168, Best in Class and Top 10 for Strategic Card Games. Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to Every Night is Game Night, the podcast that helps you get your head in the game. This is Jason.
And this is Anthony.
We are going to continue our series of episodes on Best in Class, another strategic category. I hope you're looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. Love me some card play.
Love you some card play. We are talking strategic card play. We are talking games that use cards as a primary mechanism. There's a ton of games out there that are kind of combined board and card, or they're like mostly board games, but they have some essential card play. No, we're talking about games that are basically a deck of cards, and you lay them out in a giant, big old tableau. When you play these big strategic card games, sometimes they take up more space than actual board game, which is a pretty insane thing. But Anthony and I love us some card play. We're going to talk about why we love it. We're going to talk about, all that good stuff. Anthony, do you have any comments? What's going on? By the time this episode comes out, it will have been past PAX Unplugged. I know you didn't get a chance to go, my friend, but did you get a chance to enjoy yourself regardless?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a rough year for cons, man. I got to one.
Oh man, terrible.
Yeah.
Is it only one con you've been to this year?
Yeah, just one. It was the big one. I got to Gen Con, but that was it.
Man.
Yep.
Although next year, next year or the year after, you're fixing to just like go crazy?
Next year I can go to everything except for PAX, and then the year after that, hopefully I can get back to PAX. So, and it's my favorite ones. It's hard. It sucks that I missed it, but it is. I'm living vicariously through all of my friends and my co-hosts on podcasts and everybody else.
Chris was there. He'll have a show on BGA. Hopefully I had linked up to him for that. We haven't actually set that up. We're recording this before PAX. I'll be having a little bit of a recap here on Every Night is Game Night. And all sorts of pod friends are going to be having a lot of fun. But the task at hand we are going to be talking about is Best in Class Strategic Card Games. So let's get to that right after we get to Liz and the Liz We Trust segment. This is one of those cases. I think I let the cat out of the bag. We are recording way before that this episode will actually air, so I have no idea what she's talking about. She hasn't let us down yet. So Liz, tell us about another great Kickstarter.
Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I'm here to encourage your Every Night is Game Night acquisition disorder. This week I want to talk about Divinity Original Sin from Larian Studios. It is based on a video game of the same title, and it's a fantasy RPG in which player choices impact not only the immediate next steps in your journey, but the world of the game itself. If you love the video game series, or just want to see how a video game RPG translates to the tabletop, Divinity Original Sin might be an interesting choice for you. However, it is pricey with a base pledge of $120. If it sounds like a game for you, check it out before the campaign ends on December 20th. Happy gaming!
All right. Thank you very much, Liz, for telling us about Divinity Original Sin. Before we get on to the rest of the episode about strategic card games with Anthony, I wanted to give a little bit of extended thoughts about Divinity Original Sin. I got to play a demo of this at PAX. We're doing our big wrap-up episode about PAX next week, but this week I wanted to share about this game in particular because the Kickstarter is live and there's only 1 week left. So here's some quick thoughts. Is it worth your money? On the plus side, a big plus side was the hero play. The hero play was really, really good. So the video game gave you a lot of flexibility. You could respec freely. There's a lot of different options. It didn't kind of rope you into, certain classes. Like you could build those classes, obviously, but it gave you a lot more flexibility than just like, here, have a bunch of barbarian skills, have a bunch of cleric skills. The board game seems to want to emulate that in terms of, having lots and lots of different cards, the skills, the powers. It just seems very, very open. A lot of potential for mixing and matching, which is really cool. In terms of actual gameplay, there's a cooldown system, so you use a card, you get lots of action points to do lots of different things in your turn, and depending on what you want to do, you could do big attacks and use all your action points on that. You could do many small attacks. Your skills got cooldowns, so use your big attack and then you wait a couple of turns. So you have to like manage when I'm going to use my big attack, when am I going to use my the small attacks. I have to wait a couple of turns if I'm going to use my parry. I'm in the middle of a bunch of enemies. If I use my parry now, I can't use it later. It's really cool in terms of how the hero play emulates the MMO RPG video game experience pretty well. Not one-to-one, but pretty well. So is the adventure fun? I'm going to give that one an incomplete. I did a demo for about an hour and a half. An hour of that was one combat. I rolled some pretty crazy stuff to kind of generate some extra spawns, and so about a half hour of that was like me rolling like crap and having to deal with extra spawns from the deep and all that kind of stuff. So I won't blame the game too much, but the fact that that is in the system and I can kind of get lost in this little bit of a sloggy combat for a little while can be a little bit difficult. This game is definitely on the more narrative exploration end of things, a little bit lighter on combat, so like think of like a Seventh Continent or a Tainted Grail, more than a dungeon crawler with hexes or grids or anything like that. I want my combat quick, snappy, light, but punchy and impactful. And I think the devs have a little bit ahead of them. And they said that at the table. It's like they're still hammering out, some things in terms of the combats and the interactions. It's not a done game. So I'll give Divinity Original Sin an incomplete. There's a lot of potential here. I like the IP, so it is one I'm going to keep an eye on moving forward. That is Divinity Original Sin. So now we're going to swing to the other side. From the thematic to the strategic, we're going to get back to strategic card games with Anthony. All right, thank you very much, Liz. And on to the meat of the episode, which is strategic card games. So I say that thing, strategic card games, and both of us kind of look like I said it in the Slack channel that we have, and go ahead and hit up BGA Patreon so that you have access to the Slack channel and conversation with Chris and Anthony over at BGA. So I hit up Anthony and I said strategic card games, and you knew immediately what I was talking about. So maybe you can kind of help break down what you enjoy about the strategic card game experience in particular, as opposed to kind of bigger strategic board games.
Yeah, I mean, card games are cool for, I guess, 2 or 3 reasons. One, you have your own personal tableau of information in front of you, and it's in your hand. Nobody can see it. So what you do and how you accomplish your goals is hidden to everybody else. You're building your own little engine. 2, you eventually put all that stuff in front of you, and everybody gets to see it, right? So you're building out a tableau. Cool. You're creating an engine. You're doing cool stuff. You're chaining things together, and it's all on these cards. So you're not pushing cubes. You're not trying to maintain or manage all these different things that are located across, multiple boards, your player board, the central board, other people's boards. Generally, you don't care what other people's cards are doing, unless it's like cooperative or something. But you're just trying to take these cards that are in your hand and use them in the most efficient way possible. And the best of these games, those cards can do multiple things, right? They're not just like, this card does X. This card can do X, Y, or Z, sometimes A or D, It depends on how you want to play it. And so from a strategic perspective, it's just endless opportunities for the very limited amount of information. And for me, that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple of reasons why I like them, kind of echoing and jumping off of your points. Like you mentioned before about like having your personal resources. I can't emphasize enough how important that is. And it's really highlighting to me, working in psychotherapy with young people, they gravitate towards the card games way more than they gravitate towards the board games. Just because teenagers are at that age where they want their personal stuff. Get away from my stuff. So why is Magic so popular at that age? That's exactly why, because they have their own personal stuff. And that one's a competitive game, and that one's kind of, light and kind of easy to grok, and so to speak. Even though it takes, a lot of effort to play well, anybody can kind of walk in there. So it's kind of a funny game to mention. But just in terms of like how satisfying it is to kind of have your own personal resources and be able to kind of like mess with that and put your territory mark on it before you introduce it into the world, psychologically, it's actually super, super important. That kind of stays with us past, teenagerhood into like the future, moving forward. It just feels good. It feels good to kind of, give yourself ownership of a bunch of resources, and this is mine now. I don't know if that's kind of exactly what you meant when you mentioned about the personal resources thing.
It kind of is, yeah. And there's something combative and stressful about a shared pool of stuff, and we talked about worker placement games last time we did this, and that's what that is. That's a shared pool of stuff that you have to psychologically fight people for. In a card game, once you draw a card, it's your card. You choose what you do with it. You have whatever you can do with that hand of cards, you do it, and that's pretty cool. It's like a complete opposite almost, and I like it for that exact reason.
Yeah, and so a couple of other reasons why I like the card games in particular. When a game is contained in a bunch of cards, I tend to feel like the rule set for card games, most of it is in the cards. So I don't need to process that giant chunk of rules up front in order to be able to kind of do my thing. I can take a portion of the rules, be able to know enough to get going, and then I'm almost teaching myself the game as I'm playing. So I don't know if that makes sense. But in terms of I think of, I play obviously simpler games than you do generally, but a teach of a simpler game, let's just take a completely random example, Munchkin. So I can teach Munchkin in 5 seconds, and I'm teaching myself the rest of that game along the way. So in an even more complex game, I appreciate that even more because sometimes I want to just really get my strategic things going, but I don't want to go through the whole learn an entire rule set before I even made move one. I learn by doing stuff. I want to be able to do a lot of stuff. Matter of fact, I just taught Marvel Champions, which is a game I know is more kind of close to your heart. I don't teach that game the whole thing. I teach enough to get them going, and I just do a turn. And then by the time I've done a simple teach and do a turn, and they've read their cards, and they can teach themselves as they go, it just feels like a much more organic, frictionless teach. I don't know if you've had that experience.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you teach people how to use the materials and mechanics. You don't teach them what all those materials and mechanics are. And people kind of get to discover the game on their own, which is kind of a cool thing.
All right. And, I just like the tactile feeling of cards. I like the idea. Terraforming Mars is one of my favorites because there's a giant deck of 240 cards.
Yeah. More than that, buddy.
There's something
240. Yeah.
Well, yeah, with the expansions. There's something viscerally exciting about a giant pile of cards and a game pops out of that.
Yeah.
That's just total kid stuff. Okay, so those are a lot of the reasons why I like strategic card games. I play a ton of these. I don't know Anthony's list. I know there aren't a ton of super heavy. Another reason why I like the card games. Enough strategy, but I know I'm not getting anything super, super heavy. Most of these card games I'll probably be able to handle. So I'm curious as to how much crossover my favorite card games are going to have on Anthony's list.
I think there's one decently heavy game on this list, and the rest are things that you've either played that I know of or at least heard of.
All right. So let's see how much crossover there is. Start us off with number 10.
All right. So on the worker placement list, I mentioned Russian Railroads, and possibly higher on my rankings is the card game version of that, and that's First Class. This is
okay.
Yeah. This is a 1 to 2 hour, honestly, it's closer to 1 hour version of that game, right? And you are basically drafting different cards that you build onto your trains, and then you try to move your conductors down those trains to generate points, upgrade the different cars on those trains, get better guests, and score points accordingly. And it creates this really cool tableau where you have this board and these trains shooting off the end of it, and a route that you can build as well. But the cool part is the trains where the different cars live. And it's really, really quick, but there's a lot of really interesting, deep decisions to make. The base game has never really been expanded, but it comes with 5 modules out of the box. So you can mix and match, and there's a murder mystery mode and different people from different locations coming who want to see different things. It's really cool. And it's one of those games that I will periodically bring to game night, and it doesn't always get played, but I'm always really happy when it does.
I've never played First Class. I know Chris over at BGA is a big fan of this one too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's because it's Russian railroads, kind of, but boiled down to like 1/3 the time. And so like people who want that experience, but much shorter, that's basically what you're getting.
All right. So that was First Class, and that was Anthony's number 10. We're going on to number 9.
This one is on the co-op side. It's The Lost Expedition. This is
really
yeah.
Wow.
I love this game.
That's still on your top 10 list. Holy moly!
I love this game, man. It keeps coming out. Like I did a huge cull of my games like 2 months ago. I removed several boxes of games, put them in the basement, sold a few of them, passed them on to friends, and this game survived.
Come on now. I didn't get none of those games. Let's go. Not that you have much that I would be interested in, but still.
I was about to say, I don't know if you want these games. But this game survived, especially with the expansion and some of the solo stuff that's come out for it. It's just really fun for me. And it's kind of random at times. Like the draw of the cards can really throw you off. But I can sit and play this 4, 5, 6 times in a row while watching TV and just have a blast with it. It's really fun for me.
Sure. Awesome. All right. I am. So I liked Lost Expedition at the time. I think it's completely been replaced for me by Unbroken, which I guess would count as a card game. It does a lot of the same things. I felt like I kind of played Lost Expedition out. Plus, I feel like Lost Expedition can be unfair. It's one of those things like you have this criticism of co-op games a lot where people say it's difficult, but what they really mean is random.
Yeah.
And I feel like Lost Expedition has a little bit, more than a little bit of that.
A lot, dude. I've lost this game in 5 minutes before. Yeah, it's not.
But I guess this game plays quickly enough and it has a cute enough theme for you to kind of overcome that.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you lose like that, you lose in 5 minutes. You just reset and do it again.
All right, so that was a real surprise for me. Lost Expedition, that's a very cool one. So that was Anthony's number 9. Let's get on to number 8.
This is my Oniverse game, Onirim. And I like a lot of these. We've talked about all of them over the course of this podcast, going back to one of the very first episodes, your very first episode. But sure. Onirim still stands. I mean, it's like the pure card game of the bunch. I guess Sylveon's still a pure card game, but this one's just like you have a deck of cards that you're playing through. And just, any combination of those expansions to mix things up, I still come back to this one pretty frequently. So the rest I've thrown into a box. They're all together. This one still sits on its own in its original box, and I pull it out, not often, but often enough. And it gives me, it's almost like a Zen experience because I've played it enough at this point where I'm just like, I know what I'm getting, I know what I'm looking for, and I can just kind of zone out and empty the day, I guess, is what this game does for me. So it's still one of my favorites, and it gives me enough challenge if I want it. It's there,
In the app that came out, which was excellent a couple of years ago, they get to 3 expansions. They have not released the other 4. I'm very upset. And some of the best expansions have not been released yet. I can't play a giant game like I do in the physical version. Yeah, I mean, Onirim I still play. I'll play that game forever. Yeah. I'm surprised that you consider that a strategic card game. I thought that would be more in like kind of the filler category.
Yeah, I mean, if you throw enough of that stuff in there, sure, it's strategic.
Oh, that's definitely true. All right, so that was number 7, Onirim. Very proud, very very proud pop over here.
Yeah, yeah. This is where like lighter stuff comes out for me.
All right, so that was number 8, which was Onirim. Let's get on to number 7.
All right, number 7 for me is Hardback. This is kind of the upgraded version of Paperback. It has, a few mechanics that shorten the game, streamline a little bit, make it feel more like a gamer's game. But at the end of the day, Paperback, Hardback, I don't really care. I like both of them. Hardback is like a little bit more. And the building the words part is fun for me as a guy who played Scrabble for years and loved it, played it competitively for a short period of time. It's not that. It's not Scrabble at all, but it has a lot of the same elements and gives you the same feel as a game like that, where you're just like, I feel clever because I'm comboing these things together. It's a deck builder that works in a lot of different ways. You can play it solo. Both of the games can play solo with the expansion for Paperback especially. And I don't know, it just really scratches that itch if I want to sit down and play something that like challenges me a little bit and feels familiar at the same time because it's just in that category of word games that I've been playing for years.
Paperback had an excellent solo co-op mode. I probably prefer that to the base game. The base game can be really draggy, just like any game of Scrabble, just waiting for somebody to, because there's a lot of pressure to kind of maximize your word in Paperback.
Yeah.
So like the game doesn't progress until you play a 7-letter word, or you play a big scoring word. So people are just sitting there just pausing out because it's a speed game, and it's like, oh, please. But in a co-op mode, you can help each other achieve that. You can say, okay, help me out, and what word can you make out of this? And you kind of talk a little bit. Solo is obviously beautiful. Hardback, I get why you enjoy it because it's a little bit more strategic. I enjoy it less than Paperback because I felt Paperback was just the more streamlined, easier access one. The flipping cards, there's like the weird thing with the vowels and the wild cards and everything. I felt like there was like a little bit too much wild card action in that game because of the way everything kind of twists around. And it had that Star Realms thing where it's like there's matching numbers, and it's like, there's a little bit too much going on for me for a passive, casual, kind of experience there. I'll go Paperback, but I definitely see why you like Hardback better.
Yeah, it's funny. It was the opposite for me, where like Paperback was like, this is fun, I like this, but I didn't feel challenged because it was kind of passive and how it played out. Or Hardback is like, oh, okay, this is the next level. This is cool. I like this. More to work with.
All right, so that was Hardback at number 7. Let's get to number 6.
Number 6, like, skyrocketed onto my list this year. I'd never played it before, but I got a chance to play it a fair bit this year because a friend picked up a bunch of stuff after it went out of print. That's Android Netrunner. So this is a game I had never touched. I didn't really know how it worked, except that it was like 2 asymmetrical factions facing off. But
and a huge meta, huge meta where you could not penetrate
so much. And now it doesn't matter because it's not competitive anymore because they canceled the game because of licensing rights and all that junk. But the game itself is brilliant. Like just how it works and how asymmetrical it is. Like playing the corporation and basically creating like this deduction game where you're trying to hide certain things from the runner. And then the runner side of things, you have like limited resources, but you have to use them as efficiently as possible and then try to hopefully guess the right points at which to run at the corporation and find these different objectives. It's such a cool idea. And then every single deck ends up being a little bit different in how you do that and how you approach it. It has all these different mechanics kind of blended together into this one game. And it doesn't seem like it could hold all that because it is just corporations versus runners. But then there's like 10 different types of corporations and 20 different types of runners and how they build the decks and compete against each other. It's so much fun. I was kind of kicking myself I didn't discover this before when there was more people playing it, but it's lower stress now. So, it's just play it casually. It's good.
Well-regarded solo community has grown up around Android Netrunner. People, it's one of those games where people actually program bots in computers. So you can play like web-based versions. You can download apps for it. There's all sorts of ways in which you can crack open Android Netrunner. I remember being very intimidated. So I'm still intimidated by how much stuff there is, how much people know, because it's definitely one of those barriers of like, okay, teach me Android Netrunner, ho 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 ho, okay, chill, I'll play this other game over here. But it always looked interesting, and now that, like I said before, now that it's kind of the canon is closed, maybe there's some entry into kind of rediscovering, and I'm sure that the core system, Fantasy Flight, will reboot and put on some other skin on it if they don't get the Netrunner IP back.
I hope so. Yeah, it's so good.
That was Android Netrunner on number 6. Let's get to number 5.
All right, number 5 for me is quick, short 2-player game, but probably the best quick, short 2-player game in existence for me. That's Seven Wonders Duel.
App, yes.
Yeah. This game is so fantastic. Every time I bring it out, I'm like, why am I not playing this every single day? Like, it's so good. It is for me personally, if I made a top 100 2-player games, this would be number 1. Is my favorite, and that's even with like War of the Ring being my number 1 game overall in board games. This as like, give me only 2-player games, which in my mind means short and quick and accessible. It's this, right? It's Seven Wonders Duel. It's so good, and there are solo bots. They're not amazing, but they're fun. They're satisfying. There's a app that I didn't even know about until like 2 episodes ago on BGA when Chris told me, which is amazing. So I've been playing that incessantly as well now.
Do you like that app? It feels very cramped.
Yeah, it's not great, but it's still the game, you know.
It's like pizza. Even bad pizza is pretty good.
Exactly. That's the best metaphor. Yeah, it's the pizza board game app. So I'm like, I'm still gonna play it. Could it be better? Yeah, sure, whatever. But it's still pizza. It's fine.
Yummy.
Yeah, Seven Wonders Duel is fantastic. I would like if I go to a con, I just bring this with because I'm like, at some point we'll be sitting and there'll be two of us. We'll just play Seven Wonders Duel.
Another well-regarded solo bot, which is custom, which I think is called Scotty or something. It's very, very simple. Just kind of like discard a card and it scores points. And I actually traded for Seven Wonders Duel after I discovered that solo bot, and I played the heck out of it as well. Yeah, it's very, very good. All right, so that was our number 5. Let's get to number 4. We are getting up in Anthony's. It's funny. Last week I observed that Anthony was getting more and more excited as he got up the list. Like went to the point where we got to the gallerist, and Anthony was like ready to take a shower. I love it. I am definitely sensing a similar vibe coming as we get to the top 4 here.
Yeah, probably. All right. So number 4, I think this game would actually be higher if I could get it played more often with other people. And or even just by myself, because it's a little bit of it's a big thing, right? And that's Leaving Earth. So this
wow. Yeah.
So that's Leaving Earth. So Leaving Earth is, when I discovered it, it was, I think, possibly on the solo list, and I was like, ooh, that's a cool looking cover. And then I looked into it a little bit more, and I was like, that looks like a game I would like. And the only way to get it was from the designer himself, Joseph Fatula, on his website, the Luminaris Group. And I think it's in some like light distribution now, but it's still pretty decently hard to get. And my copy is handmade in this like shoebox. And the components are high quality. They've been ordered from whoever publishes these things, but it's still, hand crafted. The idea of the game is it's in the 20-year period from like the mid 50s to the mid 70s, the space race, and you are building up like from the very basic rockets of the 1956 all the way up to the giant Saturn V rockets that got us to the moon, and then theoretically beyond that, because there are cards in here that can get you even further than the moon. And it's all card play. Everything you do, you build this giant tableau of trying to exit Earth's gravity and get to the moon and get to Mars and even get to like Venus or Saturn. There's expansions that get you like further and further out in the solar system. And the game itself is it's about planning things. It's about managing risk. So everything's open and you can decide how you want to do it. But at the end of the day, you also have a little bit of a push your luck in there where you can launch a rocket without testing it, and maybe it'll get off the ground, and that's great. Or maybe it'll explode, and you're in a bad shape. Or you can test it, which you should do. You should test it, but then you're using up actions to test it. And if you test it a certain number of times, it will launch safely. So I love that idea of, in a strategic game, you have this idea of push your luck, which is exactly what it was, because in the 50s and 60s, we were racing. We were trying to beat the Russians. We were trying to get up there first. And sometimes they didn't do things as safely as they could have because they wanted to get up there first. And
it was one of the kind of mid climaxes of The Martian, where they launched the probe into space, and they kind of skimped on the testing because they really wanted to, save, or I forget exactly how it played out. Or maybe this wasn't in the movie, this was in the book. This is definitely in the book. I'm not too sure about the movie. But like they just launched this rocket into space, and it, like nails were floating off of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, because it just wasn't stress tested because they were trying to hit deadlines and all that kind of thing. So as you were talking, I'm like, oh wow, that's something I really know. I've seen that before.
Yeah, 100%. Like playing through the game, you're like, yeah, this is the space program. It's just such an impressive. BGG lists it as a simulation, and it kind of is. It feels like a simulation in like how it plays out, but the game itself, like the actual experience, is just so solid. So I think I have one of the expansions. There are 2 or 3 of them that are also decently difficult to find and get. I haven't gotten those yet, but this is a game that I've played almost exclusively solo. I have not really played it a lot with other people. I think once, maybe twice, but it is such a good time. I absolutely love it. And I mean, anybody who likes a space program or just anything around that, I think you'll enjoy this.
I absolutely love the idea of it. I'm intimidated by it. I'm intimidated by a game that can be referred to as Math the card game.
Yeah.
But but at any point we are in the same vicinity and you're willing to teach it, I would love to play it.
Awesome.
All right, so let us get on to the number 3. See how enthusiastic Anthony was for leaving Earth, and we have 3 more to go.
Yeah, no, it gets better. It's good. All right, so number 3 on the list is one you have played. I know you played because I taught you this game. That's London, 2nd edition.
Really? Number 3? I can't believe that.
It's so good. It's such a good game.
It's good. It's not on my list.
Yeah, whatever. Your list, whatever. So London, the original edition of London, I played and I liked, and it was fine. It was a 7 for me. Maybe a 7.5, somewhere in there. But this game streamlined a lot of things. It got rid of the board completely. There used to be a map that you were trying to like place stuff. It's like almost an area control element. This got rid of it completely. Now there's just a tableau of cards for you to choose from. It's 100% cards. And what you're doing is you're building out your city, and you have multiple slots. And for every slot in your city, when you run it, you're going to take poverty. And every card in your hand, you're going to take poverty. But you'll also generate benefits and money and all this other stuff and points, right? So you're trying to balance that, make sure you keep your poverty as low as possible. Whoever has the lowest poverty in the game will score 0 for that, and everybody else will subtract that number, right? So if you can stay towards the bottom, even if you don't have the least, but you're close to that person who has the least, you're safe. But if you go hog wild and just stack up on all the poverty and take a bunch of loans, like any good Martin Wallace game, you're going to lose. You're just going to lose, so don't do that. It's really streamlined. It's really quick. And like, as a card game, it just feels satisfying to me. I always feel like I'm doing something, I'm building something, and there's like a push and pull between, do I want to place another slot in my city and make it cost more to run? Or do I just want to like maintain this engine that I have and keep it efficient? You never get to that point where you're like, well, I built my engine. There's nothing else I can do with it. You can always make it bigger. You can always do more with it. So I really, really like London.
I get it. Maybe the presentation, even on the 2nd edition has good presentation, but the art itself just seemed very kind of flat, old-timey and everything. I liked it. I definitely enjoyed it when we learned it at PAX a couple years ago. It just never, like, I have all these other city builders or engine builders just didn't seem to leap out. And maybe you like that kind of like downward pull of the, the negative points, and that kind of takes it over the line for you. I just, it's good. It's good. I'll put it there.
I like building engines, but I also like when a game puts restrictions on me and says, all right, you need to do X, Y, Z, but here's like all the things you need to worry about, like to just maintain your engine, but within these restrictions. And those tend to be the games that I enjoy the most. So that's why this falls there.
All right. So that was London, number 3 from Martin Wallace. Number 2, I would say, Oh My Goods is your number 2, but that seems high. Am I in the ballpark there?
No, unfortunately not.
Man, I thought I had. I knew that once you got past like number 5 or 4, you wouldn't put Oh My Goods there. Oh My Goods is a decent game. Liz talked a lot of nonsense about it during our last episode, but I thought it was.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It didn't make my top 10 because it kind of runs on rails a little bit at a certain point. And with the expansions, you run through, and you can kind of do the whole campaign thing, but I don't know. It doesn't hit the table repeatedly. So my actual number 2 was a toss-up because there's this now family of games. I call them like the French family from Fantasy Flight. So you've got Lord of the Rings, the card game. And then on the offshoot to the right, the story side, you have Arkham Horror, the living card game. And the offshoot to the left, like very mechanics and combat focus, you have Marvel Champions, the card game. I'm going to stick with Lord of the Rings, though. Like, that's... Yeah.
It's right down the middle.
Right down the middle. It's still the best. It's the one that I've spent the most time with. It's the one I'll bring out if I'm just like, I just want to play one of these games. I have all 3. I like all 3. But that's the one I'm most likely to want to play solo, honestly, because you're working through the story, you're challenging yourself, things kind of progress throughout the game. I love all 3 of these games, and I'm like kind of, at this point, I'm building my top 100 list. I'm like, I don't really know where to put these or how to combine them. On this list, I just like, I'm going to give one slot and pick my favorite of the 3. but it's really difficult because I like them all a lot for different reasons, and I play them in different situations. But Lord of the Rings is still the best for me. It has the best deck building experience because every card is unique. You like Marvel, you have like set groups of cards you're going to put in there. Arkham, you have kind of limited deck building overall. This game, everything you go into, you will upgrade and change and adjust your deck to match. And it's just that level of strategic thinking is very similar to like a CCG, and I really like that. So that makes it my number 2.
I like the approach. I like, just like these are similar games, so they're just going to lump up together. I can't argue with your contention of Lord of the Rings. It's one of those things where it's almost like Netrunner, where it's too big because it was too big when I first found it, and it's only gotten bigger. I thought they would stop the line at some point, but no,
yeah.
We are still getting stuff for it. And they're still innovating. Like, I was talking with Steve over at One Stop Co-op Shop, and he's like, they put sailing in here. Holy moly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's complicated. I think they're supposed to end it like next year sometime. Like they're coming to the end, but it's like 9 years in at this point. Right.
And your number 1, I think I got this one, and it was the reason why I put this list together. It's the first game I thought of when I thought of you. Is it Imperial Settlers?
Oh, man, you got it.
Yeah, there we go. Finally got something.
Yeah, no, this has been one of my favorite games for years and years and years, and honestly, it hasn't changed. And in my top 100 list, if you look at all the games there, it is the top-rated strategy card game. So it had to be number 1 here. It is... I don't know. It has its issues. I know people don't like certain parts of it. Multiplayer, it can drag and drag and drag, but I tend to play it at lower player counts or by myself. And I don't know. It's just something really unique and special about the way that you build your deck, you focus on your strategy as a particular faction, and you try to create a tableau that's going to ultimately, win out over whatever the other tableaus are or whatever the solo, things that you're trying to compete against are. There's a campaign mode that they threw in that's still a print and play. I don't think that comes in the actual printed box yet, although there's an ultimate edition of Imperial Settlers that they're going to produce next year sometime that supposedly will have that in there as, actual components. But it remains one of my favorite games to this date. I bring it out fairly regularly, and I'm not going to separate these two. They kind of lump together for me, but Empires in the North is also fantastic and just almost solidified this one at the top because I own both and I'm going to keep them both, and they're almost interchangeable at this point. I like them both for different reasons, but they're also fantastic. So it's that core mechanic that I really like.
All right, so that was Imperial Settlers. Imperial Settlers last year on the solo list had a really, really good showing. I think was in the teens. This year dropped, pretty significantly. Not sure why. Maybe the Empires of the North are splitting the vote. Maybe, other people are kind of playing other things. There is a game that did reach the top strategic card game kind of category in the space this year. And it was a little bit of a surprise to us. I think it was more a surprise to the gamers and the consistent content creators. But if you look in the wider kind of what people are playing, what people are voting for, just like gamers who are posting on Facebook, there's no question that this is kind of their game of the year this year. So Wingspan debuts at number 12, which is the highest game on the solo list. Wingspan kind of divisive, kind of polarizing, and for a lot of different reasons, not just because of the pure gameplay, but for other outside reasons as well. Let's just kind of focus on the gameplay, because I think a lot of people have said a lot about, the representation and, blah, blah, blah. Let's just focus on the Wingspan as a game. Is Wingspan the game worth such a high place on this list, such a high place on the BGA listener list? I think it came out as number 2 on your different list. Do you feel like solo, multiplayer, whatever you want to kind of say about it, is it worth all that attention?
No, but also yes, maybe. I don't know. It's really hard.
Okay.
Because it's the same thing like looking at a game like Splendor and being like, why do people love this game? You're like, well, of course they do. It's simple, it's quick, it's accessible, and it does what it does really well. I don't like it, but it does what it does really well. Wingspan kind of falls in that same bucket for me. I enjoyed it. I still own it. I have the expansion sitting behind me that's waiting to get to the table. But as a game, it's definitely on the simpler side. I don't know. It's really hard for me to kind of quantify. And I had this problem when I reviewed the game, 8 months ago, where it was like, I like it. And if it wasn't such a hot game that everybody was talking about, I would just be like, yeah, this game's fine. It's a 7, move on, right? But then I feel like in this case, I have to justify, well, why is it only a 7 when everybody else says it's a 9 or a 10? And I'm like, I don't know. It's not doing anything particularly revolutionary, It's a tableau builder. It's an engine builder.
Well, let me take a stab at it. So like just kind of maybe a next level answer to that question. So why, and it's not just you. I mean, I think a lot of people who like kind of meaty or heavy, like Imperial Settlers is a meaty, heavy game with a lot of stuff going on. Mm-hmm. Wingspan doesn't get to that. It doesn't want to get to that. However, if you are used to those games, like Wingspan is kind of easily grokkable. You kind of know in the first couple of passes what cards kind of combo together, how to get your entire personal mat just covered with eggs all over the place or whatever kind of engine you're going for. And I've heard this comment a couple of times about how if you kind of get your stuff going, that last round or two, you can just kind of press play on your engine and then it's points. And it's not supposed to do that. Because what part of the Wingspan thing is, it has the variable scoring. So you're scoring 1 round for the amount of eggs, and when you're scoring 1 round for certain sets of stuff, so it's, and you can flip those around, you can change the order of them. So I think the idea was that variable scoring was going to kind of adjust your play and not make it such a straight line, build my engine and play. However, the engine, once you get that engine going, it's so powerful. You can make the engine so powerful that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
what the actual random scoring setup is, you set that up and you go. And I think if you are, if you're someone like you who plays just a ton of these complicated card games, it's easy to see, it's easy to pull off. And then it's once you do that, it's kind of not satisfying anymore. Or especially in the multiplayer. I think the solo does a little bit of a better job.
Sure.
David Studley was on the solo. It kind of frustrates you a little bit more directly. In the multiplayer, people are working on their own engines. So you're free to just kind of okay, I'm just going to do my thing. Or freer. I shouldn't say this happens all the time. I just feel like it happens enough if you know what you're doing. And in a solo, that bot goes at you a little bit more directly and kind of messes up what you're trying to do. So it's I feel like it was a little bit more challenging. So I think that's part of why it ranks so high in the solo list. In multiplayer, press an engine and go, that's not all that satisfying gameplay.
No. Yeah. And the thing is too, and I haven't had this experience personally, but talking to Chris on BGA and a couple other people in my local game group, there are certain combinations of cards that are insane. Right. You get the right combo out there and you just start shoving things into it and you just score an ungodly amount of points. So some of the point spreads I've seen in this game could be, the winning score could be twice as high, 3 times as high as the losing scores. And it ends up feeling almost kind of like a Merrick Lane game, like a Blood Rage or something, where you're well, if you maximize your engine, you're going to obliterate everybody.
Not just win, but rock.
Yeah, exactly. And the game has gotten so much play by so many people that we're starting to see what those combinations look like. And not a lot of games get to that many plays, but this one has. So it's not that it's imbalanced per se. It's just people need to be aware of those situations. But because it's kind of a light, medium weight game, a lot of people who play it aren't aware of that. And you can kind of stumble into one of those strategies. And that makes it challenging. So if you're bringing this out to show it to new or intermediate gamers, you almost kind of have to manage the situation a little bit. And it's a little rough. I don't like sitting there and pointing out to people oh, well, he put these 2 down, so that's not good because he can do this and this and this. You should be aware of that. You don't want to be that guy, but if you don't, then that person's going to crush everybody and make them feel bad. It's
and if you're the teacher, you kind of have to play left-handed a little bit.
100%.
Because you might know what it'll be obvious to kind of recognize when some of those key combos are coming together, and maybe the noobs at the table won't see that so fast. So it's let me not do that. Let me not crush the spirits of the people that are here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 100% one of those games. The more you play it, the better you'll do. And
exponentially the better you'll do, not just inch upwards.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes me worry about I haven't played with the European expansion yet, but it makes me worry a little bit, like throwing new cards into the deck. I'm like, is this going to make it even more crazy with the combos, or does it water it down a little bit? I'm not sure, but
Right.
Yeah, that's what I end up having the challenge with. Like it's what Terraforming Mars does to a small degree at a much larger degree, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking a lot about Wingspan. I think we're trying to answer the question because I think it happens every week on one of the Facebook groups. Like, is Wingspan worth the hype? First of all, a significant amount of the hype is because of outside the game things. And I think when people see hype, they see a hype cloud around the game, they assume, oh, this game is hyped as better mechanically than, this anything else that I've ever seen. And they're confusing stuff. It's like apples and oranges. Like it's not hype because it's such a great, great game. It's hype because of the accessibility. And it's hype because women and the designers and the artists and all that kind of stuff. That all that access stuff is why this game is hyped.
Yeah.
So then seeing it this high on a bunch of lists where people are really focused on gameplay is actually very surprising to me because of the issues that we're talking about. We're trying to explain, why it's, why some of the gamers are kind of like, dumping on this game a little bit. But then the casual gamers is who cares? Like a lot of the people that are playing this game aren't going to get to that point of just like murdering everybody else at the table, and they're just like kind of enjoying the pictures of the birds, and they're enjoying like the simple engine building. They're enjoying the components. The components absolutely have a lot to do with, the people's experience of the games. And I really do think the solo is a very, very good, bot that challenges you to kind of change up your strategy. You can just, press your engine and go. So I wonder if this game has staying power as the number one, the kind of engine building game of all time. Usually it's Race for the Galaxy, which I'm not going to talk a lot about. I've talked a lot about that game already. I love it. It's my personal favorite, that kind of engine card game, the solo multiplayer. I don't know. Or maybe Empires of the North kind of catches fire and, rises up the ranks. It kind of placed outside the top 100, but it was a pretty impressive debut for how late in the year it came out. I don't know if the support and all this kind of stuff will kind of lead that to a higher level, or will it just people say, oh, I already have this. It's called Imperial Settlers. I'll play that.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think part of the thing with Imperial Settlers, too, is in the last 5 years, there's been at least one expansion every year. There was nothing this year. There was just the new game. So
right.
I think, and there was a really bad roll and write, but that was it. So it does make me wonder where that one's going to fall. Wingspan, for me, I know they have like 3 or 4 expansions planned for this thing. So there's going to be new content for it every 6 to 12 months for the next 2 years. I think it'll stay up there. I don't know why it wouldn't. Mm-hmm. It's going to have new stuff, and maybe they'll refine it a little bit, like the typical, Stonemaier approach.
Right. So I forgot to mention some other noteworthy card games in this category. Baseball Highlights 2045.
Oh, yeah.
It's a nice little game.
It's good.
Oh, yeah. Football Highlights is a follow-up, which I haven't played that one yet, but I imagine it's pretty good. You were very high on this game when it first came out. I'm a little bit surprised it didn't make your list in some capacity. The Castles of Burgundy card game?
Yeah, that one's tough. It is one of my favorite games, but at the same time, it's like a iteration of another game, so it kind of fell down for me.
You'd prefer to play the board. See, I'd say this is a perfect example of you put something in cards and you make it good. I much prefer the card game.
Yeah.
The board game, I just, like, it has that thing of like, I see the board, and to me, the board, it just, I don't grok it as easy as I grok cards in my hand.
Yeah.
I feel like I can be more effective combo player when I have the cards in my hand. I still play it because you can actually put it in a Magic deck box the whole game, and you can't do that with the board game.
That is true.
So I carry that with me.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, they're both in my top 100, but Castles of Burgundy's top 50, and the card game is closer to 100.
Yeah. Palm Island is a neat little game in terms of strategy for solo. Doesn't quite have the staying power because it's a hand. It's an airport game, but I definitely felt like I wanted to mention it because people do like the fact that it's casual and you can kind of play it, on your Barca Lounger and all that kind of stuff. We did, as I mentioned before at the beginning of the episode, we did not mention a single deck builder. We mentioned a whole bunch of card games, no deck builders. That's a whole separate episode. Yeah. We'll be lining that up at some point. But Anthony, thank you, my friend, for indulging me in my desire for top 10 list strategy. You are my man for strategy. You are going to get the call every single time I put together one of those kind of episodes.
Yeah, I'm on it. I'm going to do it.
You were telling me about your Essen pile, and it's like, oh.
Yeah. Don't stay tuned to this one. Stay tuned to BGA if you want to hear about those games.
Oh, no. There's no chance, my friends. Go over to BGA, listen to Chris and Anthony talk about Marco Polo 2.
Yes, that's on the list. Crystal Palace is on the list. There's so many good games. So many good games if you like that stuff.
Go over to BoardGamersAnonymous.com, sister podcast to Every Night is Game Night. We have our own website, everynightisgamenight.com, ENGN podcast on the Twitter, Every Night is Game Night Facebook group. Go ahead and interact with us there. We have some links to our Slack channels. We are over at the One Stop Co-op Shop sharing some space over there. You can also reach me and Anthony over on the BGA Slack channel, which is connected to their Patreon. Please go ahead and contribute. Anytime, I think they have all sorts of, you guys have settled down the rules for that, right? You guys, I know there was a little bit of a transition there.
With the Patreon?
Yeah.
We've more or less settled in. We are planning a couple new things for the new year, but we a couple months off from that. So it's all right. Basically at this point, you back it, you get access to all of our extra stuff, extra episodes every month, our Slack group, all the good stuff, and we'll hopefully roll some new contests out here in the near future.
All right, so I'm looking forward to it. We are very, very close to New Year's. Happy New Year's, my friend.
Yeah, you as well.
And we are going to close the show on that. This is Jason.
This is Anthony.
Reminding you to take a game off of that shelf and let's make every night a game night.